Good morning. My name is Forrest Westall. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Neuse River Basin Association, and I will add my welcome and the welcome from our membership to you to this symposium that Mike has already given. The UNRBA appreciates this opportunity and appreciates the work being done through the collaboratory funding and through the Center for the Environment at UNC. Today I'm going to focus on the work of the UNRBA and how that work is going to be benefited by what the collaboratory is doing and where we are in our process of re-examining the Falls Lake rules. As with everything, we begin with Falls Lake. It is the center and the focus of today's presentation. It is a regional resource. Everyone knows that. It was controversial and had all kinds of issues when it was being planned and when it was being constructed. As it has emerged, it has become a tremendous regional resource for all sorts of things. It was originally designed for flood control to help mitigate impacts downstream in the Neuse River Basin, but it is also providing drinking water to more than 500,000 customers in the Raleigh distribution system. It is a regional recreational facility. It is a facility that's used by boaters, by fisher people, by all sorts of swimming activities, camping along the area. There's all kinds of venues for having meetings and get-togethers in the parks and access areas along the lake, and so that is a good sign that the lake is meeting those intended uses. It provides a lake habitat for aquatic life and a habitat for terrestrial wildlife. It also protects downstream water quality by adding flow to the river. Under low flow conditions, normally the Neuse River has extremely low flow in the summer and early fall, and this reservoir provides additional flow during that period of time to provide both habitat and also mitigation of discharges from wastewater treatment facilities. Just want to give a brief rundown of our members and the perspectives of the UNRBA. The UNRBA was created in the mid-90s, 1990s, to provide a forum for discussion. And as time went on and as the regulatory agencies in the state began to develop management actions that needed to be followed, the UNRBA adjusted to that. We are made up of 6 counties, 6 municipalities, a water and sewer authority in the watershed, and the soil and water conservation districts are represented on the board. This brings to the table a lot of perspectives. It brings to the table perspectives from urbanized areas and rural areas, from point and non-point sources of all types and all kinds, local government certainly, agriculture and the community at large, developers, other people that are in this watershed that are impacted by the management strategy for Falls Lake. It also includes state and federal entities such as DOT, prisons, and educational facilities. So there's a lot of perspective here that comes to the table for the UNRBA, which helps us in rounding out our work so that we may make recommendations on an improved or revised strategy for Falls Lake. In the consideration of managing nutrients in this watershed and in this lake, it is important to note several challenges that this reservoir and this lake represents. First of all, it is a Piedmont reservoir, a dammed up river, a created lake, and therefore it experiences all of the concerns and problems related to Piedmont lakes. The hydrology, the low rainfall in the fall of the year, and the low flows coming in, increased detention time, the soils in the watershed, the other aspects of the watershed that makes it a great reactor for growing chlorophyll A. North Carolina adopted a chlorophyll A standard of 40 micrograms per liter in 1979 due to problems on the Chowan River. That standard is now applied to the entire Piedmont in North Carolina. As a result, Falls Lake has had trouble being at levels below the 40 micrograms per liter. We believe that that represents a natural sort of situation for this reservoir. In addition to that, if you look at the ways to control nutrient loading, only nutrient loading, we can't change the basic characteristics, geology, and hydrology of this basin, but we can look at those areas where we might be able to control nutrients. This watershed is 60% forested. That means that the controls in those areas, our ability to do that is very limited. They do represent a stable condition, and we want to preserve those and make sure that we keep those areas as much as we can without development, because that helps protect the long-term water quality of the lake. But that, in reality, that leaves only a small portion of the watershed that is actually developed, and the challenges of doing that are very great. But on the basis of the problems of meeting the chlorophyll A, the state developed a draft nutrient management strategy in around 2008. It was adopted in 2011, but when it came out, there was a lot of interest in this in the people in the watershed, as you might imagine. That strategy, of course, came out in 2008 in that area, and the discussion started in the watershed. That generated a lot of interest, obviously, in those jurisdictions that would be regulated by this management strategy. As a result, the folks that were impacted by this, including the folks that used the water in the reservoir, came together to discuss how to come up with a management strategy that would be both protective of the existing uses in the lake and allow for adaptive management, allow to look at changes to the management strategy as time goes on. The ultimate reduction requirements in the proposal were very high. As a result, the consensus principles includes a two-stage approach rather than a one-stage approach, and allows this to happen in increments over time. And so it provided, in addition to that, it provided, these consensus principles provided a framework for re-examination, and that's what the UNRBA is in the process of doing right now. All parties agreed that protection of water supply was an extremely high priority, and they wanted to keep that certainly at the top of their list. The lake nutrient management strategy is the most aggressive and requires the greatest level of reductions of any watershed in North Carolina. The two stages, the first stage is to meet the standards in the lower portion of the lake where the intake is at. Those reduction requirements have been agreed to by the participants in the UNRBA and those that helped develop the consensus principles. As a result, all of the jurisdictions in the watershed have either implemented or in the process of implementing all of the control requirements in stage one for these 5 areas that are listed on the right-hand side of this slide. This reservoir and this management strategy addresses something that has been very difficult to capture because of technology limitations, logistics, just the physical reality of installing retrofits, and that's offsetting existing development. New development requirements have been in effect since 2012, and those continue to be implemented. In looking at what had been done previously to support the strategy, chlorophyll A standard is certainly on the table to look at relative to its application to the lake, and the UNRBA continues to do that. But we are mainly focused on the re-examination of stage 2. The cost of stage 1 and stage 2 was estimated by the state in developing the rules to be $1.5 billion. That is a challenge for the folks that are in this watershed, and they're very interested in making sure that whatever actions they take will be effective in helping to maintain water quality and improve water quality in this lake and meet uses. The goals of the UNRBA are very centered around information, data, and scientific analysis. We want to use a science-based approach to nutrient management. We want to protect the water quality in the lake, and we want to meet the designated uses. We want to use local resources effectively. So we believe that the work that we have done in developing a much more robust data set and developing much more extensive modeling and is going to be extremely helpful in doing a better job of capturing studying all the behavioral aspects of this reservoir. This has been a very comprehensive process from beginning to end and will result in much better information about how this lake reacts to nutrients. The work being done under the collaboratory is a tremendous addition to that and will provide for more information in the development of this analysis, which will feed into the recommended revised strategy. Framework of the reexamination, as I've kind of gone over to some degree, is to monitor, to test, to do special studies, to provide a robust set of data to feed a modeling effort. Before all of this was done, the UNRBA went through an exhaustive process to design the study. The state approved the study. We designed our modeling program, chose the models we were going to do. The state reviewed that and provided comments on it. We're going to provide, after we do the modeling and test scenarios of management, we're going to look at cost benefit. What is the return on the investment of controlling nutrients in this watershed? What activities are most effective? And if we come up with a workable strategy, then we implement that, and we go to the state, we go to the EMC, and we ask them to consider the information that we've developed in revising the strategy for Falls Lake. The data collection studies, UNRBA had an aggressive monitoring program that began in 2014 and ran through 2018, 51 months of data, 38 stations in the watershed, a lot of supplemental studies that were done, special studies on stormwater, on the bathymetry of the lake, on sediment, just all sorts of information that were developed above and beyond what were available in 2005 through 2007. And we provided summary reports on our website of all of the studies that were done year by year, and then one final study in 2019 that's available for you all to look at, as well as access to data. The purpose of the 4 models that were selected are to certainly have a better understanding of nutrient loading to Falls Lake. The modeling was done by the state, focused on the lake. We have both the lake and the watershed covered. We have a very aggressive modeling program in the watershed to tell us the source of the nutrients, how those nutrients may be reduced. We're going to consider the cost and the technical feasibility of doing these things in a revised strategy. And we're working with stakeholders throughout the process. We want to hear the issues they have. We want to develop a partnership with the regulatory agencies. We want to develop workable alternatives for stage 2 of the Falls Lake management strategy. We have developed a watershed model using a well-established watershed analysis risk management framework model, and that represents a way of tracking all the nutrients in the watershed and being able to trace those back to the source. We are using a simple model in the lake, 3 different models in the lake, but the first one is developed by the same developers that did the WARP model for the watershed. We're doing a very complex EFDC model for the lake itself. That was the model that was developed by DWR for falls in the past, and we are doing a statistical model using Bayesian principles so that we can do a lot of testing of hypotheses and potential management strategies. Status of the reexamination. We're in the process of developing and calibrating our models. We're going to go into the application of those models, and we're going to look at different scenarios. We're going to develop a revised nutrient management strategy based on that input. We're going to use the input from the public, the interest groups, the stakeholders, all of those to help screen the recommendations that we would have on a strategy that we can put before the Environmental Management Commission, the Department of Environmental Quality, and the Division of Water Resources. We have integrated our effort with the UNC collaboratory funded research. We're going to use the information they're developing in our watershed modeling and our lake modeling, evaluation of designated use, and in nutrient management outreach. We're also using the well-established and researchers that work certainly on the Jordan and others to help advise us on how we're moving through the process. We think this is a very aggressive and productive way in which we can produce a recommendation that will have lots of support, hopefully by all the groups. I noted know today is going to be filled with a lot of good presentations, and I'm looking forward to following those as well as you are. Thanks.